Hi everybody, so in this Starfield video I'm comparing gameplay footage from an Xbox Series S console with a Lenovo Legion T5 gaming PC that's running with 16GB of RAM and a NVIDIA RTX 3070 card inside it. It's got an AMD Ryzen 7 5800 CPU. So, you know, it's not top of the tree by any means, but it's kind of okay. And I wanted to talk about kind of impressions. And, you know, if you watch the video full screen, maximum resolution, it'll give you an idea of what's going on. You've got to remember that I'm not an expert when it comes to creating this sort of video. You know, you'd have to go to somewhere like Gamers Nexus, where they really compare machines and resolutions and all this sort of stuff. But I can kind of tell you the way I feel in realistic terms, having played several hours of Starfield and probably played about, I don't know, probably about half on my Xbox Series S and about half on my gaming PC. Because one of the really cool things about Starfield, if you've got it on Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, or Game Pass as well, I think, the one way you can get the game on the PC and the console, is that it has cross-platform saves that are done really easily. It's their play anywhere kind of idea. Oh, before I go any further, of course, when you're watching this gameplay, the footage with all those details on the left-hand side, that's from the PC, because I can do that on the PC, but I can't really do that for the console. So you can play for a bit on your console, and then when you quit out, it saves it all to the cloud, and when you fire up your PC, you can carry on just where you left off. And I guess if you're playing it via the cloud streaming service on like a phone or a tablet with a Bluetooth controller, the same would happen. It's very smooth, it works very, very well. I'm very, very happy with it. Also, it's incredibly early days for Starfield. It's literally only just come out when I'm recording this video. I'm recording this video on the 9th of September, and it came out to the public a couple of days ago. It's been in early release for about a week or so. But especially for a Bethesda game, it's very, very early days. And normally Bethesda games release in a terrible state. And if you think about almost all of the big RPGs of the last few years, many of them have had a trouble release. Cyberpunk 2077 probably being the most famous example of that. So the performance we're seeing now on console and on PC probably won't really equate to the performance we're going to see in 3 and 6 months time. So if you're watching this in 3 months or 6 months time, or into 2024, the game will probably run much better. In fact, I know it will definitely run much better on console and PC. So kind of what happens at the moment on Xbox Series S, it runs at about 30 frames a second. To be honest, the motion blur isn't that brilliant. The motion blur on PC is better, I think. So as long as you're not flipping the camera around too fast, on Xbox Series S, it looks fine. There's not as much detail, not much shadows. The textures aren't quite as sharp as you'll see on the PC, but it's still very, very playable. Now, when you come across to the PC, obviously it's sharper. You've got more detail. The frame rate is higher. It does hit 60 frames a second. Now, the way that I set mine up is that the kind of most important thing to me is VSync, right? I do not like screen tearing. I can't stand it. So I know lots of people are saying, oh, you should never have VSync on, but I will have VSync on to make sure I don't get any screen tearing. I also just have my monitor at 60 frames a second because of the way that I capture gameplay in order to share it on YouTube. So you won't see on this particular video, you won't see the frame rate going above 60 frames a second because it's on VSync and the monitor isn't. But for me, when I'm playing a single player game like this, 60 frames a second is more than high enough. However, if you keep an eye on the frame rate, it doesn't always get to 60 frames a second, which is quite surprising for me. Because something like, actually it's not that surprising, but something like Cyberpunk 2077, for example, now consistently hits 60, well, it hits higher than that on this particular PC, and that is probably, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I don't really optimize my PC at all. I just kind of fire up programs, games, set them to high normally, and then just kind of see what happens. I know to turn ray tracing off. But the biggest thing, I think, with Starfield at the moment is we haven't got DLSS, and I'm again not too technical about this, but NVIDIA, especially with their cards, have the ability to create faster frame rates from lower resolutions. So it means that you can have a much sharper, faster looking game than you would if you just run it natively. What the settings I'm running here on the PC, it's native. It's 100% 1920 by 1080 high settings, and I think I'm using CAS, I think, or the really simple type of doing it. When we get DLSS involved and you have a NVIDIA graphics card, it will look much, much better, because my experience with Cyberpunk 2077 especially is that when you set up DLSS properly and have a play around with it, it transforms the game in terms of the sharpness and the frame rate, and it just looks way, way better. At the moment there are some mods out there that will do it, but I'll wait. And I wouldn't even be surprised if in a few months, I know people say they're not going to do it, but if there is a performance mode that comes out for Xbox Series S or consoles in general that will give you 60 frames a second, in the same way that several months after the release Cyberpunk 2077, we got performance mode of that, which whacked it up to 60 frames a second. So, although the PC version looks much better, is sharper, the textures look better, and the frame rate is higher, don't let that make you think that the console, the Xbox Series S version, isn't playable. What I find, having like a gaming PC and an Xbox Series S, is that for the first 10 minutes when I swap over from, say, the gaming PC, and this isn't just for Starfield, but for any particular title, and that where I'm playing it on both platforms, for the first 10 minutes it can be a bit jarring if the frame rate is a lot lower, and if the sort of the textures and the graphics aren't as high. So a good example could be something like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, for example. You know, a shooter. On the PC, it looks incredibly crisp. The view distance is miles away. I set it at 60 frames a second. It could go much, much higher. And then when I go back to Xbox, it's still whacking along at 60 frames a second, but the texture is a lot lower, and it doesn't look as good. But after about 10 minutes, you get used to it, and you don't really notice the difference that much if it's a good game, and you don't just concentrate on graphics all of the time. So, if you're watching this video and considering, well, should I buy a gaming PC or an Xbox Series S to play Starfield, then well, if you've got the money for a gaming PC, great, but it plays very well on the Xbox Series S. And the beauty with it being on Game Pass, especially Game Pass Ultimate, is that if you have a gaming PC and you have an Xbox, well, you can just get it through Game Pass Ultimate. Don't buy the game, just have Game Pass Ultimate, and you can play it on both anyway, so it's nice and easy that way. I guess if you're on PC and you're like buying it on Steam, so you're not getting the Xbox version, so I guess you're not getting Play Anywhere, with the Windows version, so you're not getting Play Anywhere, then I'm not quite sure how that works. But for me, it's the gameplay of Starfield that sucks you in. It's the immersion. It's an excellent game. I've only played it for about 8 hours now, but already I'm loving it. I can't wait to explore this universe much, much more. And I'm not even a big Bethesda RPG player. I do like adventure games, but I mainly concentrate on shooters and games like DayZ, PUBG, Battlefield, Call of Duty, that sort of thing. But I'm really, really liking this game. So for me, anyway, the performance on my PC is obviously much better than on the console, but they're both good. It's both playable, and I think you'd be happy with either because the game is just so good. Anyway, what do you think? Put your questions and comments down below, and I will, of course, see you again soon.